Okay, so we come back to part 2 of our teaching of reading using Happy Readers. And what we're going to look at here, we're going to look at the Happy Readers teacher support materials that come in the boxes, in addition to the pupils' books that we've been concentrating our efforts on till now. And then we'll look in some detail at how do we go about using Happy Readers in the classrooms. And then we'll move on to part 3. So let's first look at the teacher support materials. Well, in the box that comes, you get 12 sets of pupils' books, 12 sets of 9 pupils' books, but we also get quite a few things for the teachers and the classroom to use, and we'll have a look at these one by one. We start off with some sentence and action words, and these are simple little incomplete sentences, 7 sentences, and a number of action words that can be used to play initial pre-reading games. We then have alphabet posters, ABC wall posters that go up on the wall to cover the alphabet, A to Z, and also the numbers from 1 to 12, and then some summary posters as well. We have character posters for the main characters, Betty Bear, Larry Lion, Harry Hippo. We put those up, they're nice and colourful, and it helps us to introduce the characters in the books to the children before they read them. We have word cards, and these again are given to you as A4 sheets that need to be cut along the shown cut lines to form flashcards that we can then use for various games and activities. We have them for books 1 to 3, and then we also have them for books 4 to 9 in a slightly smaller format. We have a teacher's handbook, which contains all the stuff that we're really covering today, plus has summaries of each of the books for you, the teacher. So you've got everything that's in the 9 books summarized in that one book there. And then lastly, we have a teacher's activities book, which is a set of activities that can be done to enhance learning, make learning fun, using just the resources that are provided in this kit that we've just covered here. The box also contains a number of reading registers, which are very, very important for us to track the progress of children as they go through the scheme. And we fill out for each child their name, their details, and when they complete each book. We'll be covering that in some detail in the next section of these presentations. And then lastly, we have a number of individual reading cards. Again, need to be cut up. One A4 sheet makes 3 individual reading cards, which can then be folded and fit in the child's pocket, and they show each child when they make progress by getting through each of the color levels. Again, we'll cover that under progress monitoring. Inside that pre-reading and reading support activities book, a number of activities to do, and there's a rough outline of how all of these activities and materials might fit in to a 3-term year. This is a rough guide, will obviously depend very much on the curriculum and the approach, but that gives you a rough sort of idea of the sorts of activities and when they fit into the curriculum. So if we look at the pre-reading and reading support activities that we have, and all of these are explicitly covered in that activities handbook with detailed instructions how to do it. We'll also be looking at some of these a little bit further on in this presentation. We have activities around pre-reading basics, which are action words, learning the alphabet, introducing the characters, and finishing the sentences. We will look in some detail at those in this session here. We then, as we get into preparation for reading, we have a couple of activities for looking at the book and using of word cards. We conduct the first reading books, book 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 9. And after each one, we can do exercises in word recognition and familiarity and vocabulary development and sorting and sentence building. And some of those games, like the new word bingo game, we do after each book, and we'll be doing that in detail and hopefully enacting it as part of this training session. So those are the tools we've got as a teacher. How do we use all this? How do we combine teacher tools and the Happy Readers materials to introduce a reading program into your school? And we're going to take a look at 2 aspects of that, one of which is using Happy Readers in groups. How do we organize children into groups, and how do we organize the Happy Readers to be used in those groups? And then we'll go into more detail on some of the learning games and activities that we've just mentioned there and how they interleave with those group activities. So when we look at using happy readers in the classrooms, we do have some challenges. In a box of books, we've got 12 sets of pupils' books, but we've got 48, or often more, children in a class. And in some of the classes in Malawi, I know that the class sizes are very, very large indeed, 100, 200 plus children in a single class. But generally we say that one box of class books, one box of Happy Readers books of 12 sets should be enough to serve 48 children at a ratio of 4:1. If you have very, very large classes, we will be looking to allocate more boxes of books to your school so that you have enough sets of books to use with your children and their groups. Because what we say is that each child, when they're learning, should read their own copy of the book. So we have to allocate them accordingly, and through the use of groups, this is quite feasible. We have many children to one teacher, and children need time to learn, practice, and master the 4 parts of each book. This is one of the greatest challenges in teaching of reading in very, very large class sizes. And of course, we have to ensure that we fit to the ministry curriculum and timetable. So what approaches do we take? Well, first of all, we suggest splitting the children into groups of 12 as far as possible, or a number appropriate to the number of sets of books that you have and the number of children. And each child gets their own copy of the book, and they all do the same book at the same time within their group. We'd like to monitor progress within the group. We have to look at timetabling. How many reading sessions per week does each child get, and how long is each session? If we've got a reading session, we're going to do 4 groups in it. That we can maybe, and if it's an hour long, maybe we can do 15 minutes per group. But that has to be worked out by you, the school, according to your timetabling and curriculum. We have the issue of extra reading sessions. Can we schedule these in the afternoon? It's basically anything that we can do to give extra time for the children to read. And each school will need to define their own approach on this. And the thing we read is that we use Happy Readers to support the ministry approach to reading, not to replace it. So if we look at teaching Happy Readers to groups of children, we want the group to go through each book together in sequence. And again, we reiterate, children must read the books in sequence. What we do not like to do is to hand the books out randomly to children and they just swap around. Because if they do that, they will not get the benefit of the progressive approach, because Happy Readers depends on children doing the books in sequence, because we gradually build on top of the learning in each previous book. Okay, we cascade books to other groups in the class. For example, we might have Group A, Group B, Group C, and Group D. Group A will start on Book 1. When they complete Book 1, they go on to Book 2, and then Group B then starts on Book 1, etc., etc. And so we cascade each of the books through each of the groups. And if you look at the teacher handbook, there's more detail on grouping. We see in the picture here, we've got the children at the bottom, and they're in a group, and they're all reading from the same page of the same book. Okay, and this helps us in our group learning. So if we look at teaching to groups of children, how do we approach doing the first book? And if we prepare for the first book, we will introduce the character using the posters, in this case Betty Bear. The action word exercise A1 that we referred to earlier, will introduce the first reading actions of run and jump. And we'll look at this activity in the next couple of slides in more detail. So what we then do, when we've done those activities, we've introduced the characters, we know the first new words, we then open to the first reading page of the book that we see here, and it's got the picture and the words. And what we do then is we cover the text with just a blank piece of paper, so all we see is the picture, and we say, who is this? And we know from the character poster it's Betty Bear, and we say, what is she doing? She is running. And if necessary, we explain what she's doing in the local language, and we use again the word card for run that, remember, the children will be familiar with from having done the action words exercise. And then we use the word cards to form basic sentences. Yeah, I can run, Betty can run, and on the next page it'll be Betty can jump. So we do the same activity there. What this achieves is that When we then start the actual reading of the book, there will now be no new words on the first 2 pages. Okay, which is important for children, that the context is different, but there are no new words, and only on page 3 do they start to encounter new words. Okay, so if we then go through guided reading in the group, we do various activities. The easiest of which is to do repeat after me, whereby you, the teacher, read, the children repeat after you. We can do it line by line, and gradually we do this repeating until the children can do it on their own with less and less assistance, until they can do it on their own. One of the things we try to do is make sure that children are not memorizing, and so what we ask them to do is you then ask individual children to read lines and pages out loud. We can then do variations to say point to a random sentence and ask a child to read it, and then we can read a random sentence and ask the child to point to it. Again, this is reiterating that they are able to recognize the words on the page, not just repeating by rote. We basically repeat all these activities until each child in the group can read the full story with the pictures, but without assistance from you, the teacher. And then we use the last 3 sections of the book to verify this. We have a section of reading without the pictures that we saw earlier. A child should now be able to read the text on page 25 without the pictures and be able to read it correctly. We then need to ensure they recognize the new words out of context of the story, and there's a number of activities that we do to enhance and reinforce this and make it fun. We'll be looking at some of those activities in the next section. And then lastly, we use the comprehension questions to see if children have understood what it is they have read by being able to answer the questions. And once the group has then completed the book and the children are able to read a particular book, we then mark it off in the reading register. Now let's look at some of the activities and games that we do. We use activities and games to enhance and deepen the learning experience and to make it fun, okay? Because children learn through play, and activities and games are fun and they stimulate interest and understanding. And we use the learning games to solidify children's basic reading skills. And these pages here show a few of the possible activities, and there are many more activity suggestions and ideas in the teacher's guide with lots of variations on these activities as well. And of course, as teachers, you are very, very welcome to create or adapt your own activities and games using either these materials or any additional ones that you may care to develop. So let's look at 4 particular games and activities that we've done. So more detail of all of these are in the pre-reading and reading support activities book that's there. And what hopefully we'll do is in the training, we'll actually enact these activities, which I will leave to the facilitator to organize and coordinate. But it's quite fun if we as teachers can actually enact the games ourselves. It makes it more meaningful when we then try to apply it in our classes. Again, all the A1, A4, C3, they are the reference numbers of the activities in the book and that we've used before in earlier slides. So let's look at the action words activities. Well, when do we do it? We do this from the very beginning, long before starting book 1. We can do it from very, very early stages because we're trying to introduce the concept of words and to introduce a small number of action words in English. And the idea is that children should be able to understand what the words mean and are able to do the action shown by the word. And children then get to know the first 2 words in book 1 before they attempt it, as we saw in the previous slide. So what do? We start by choosing 4 action words flashcards. The ones for stand, sit, run, and jump. And then you, the teacher, you stand in front of a group of children who are sitting down, and you show the stand and sit card to the children. You say the word in English, and if necessary, give the equivalent word in their local language. And then explain that you want the children to do what the card says when you hold it up. Then you hold up the stand card so children can see it, and don't say anything. And the children should all stand because they are obeying the instruction in the word card. Then we repeat this action with the sit card, and the children should all sit, and then stand and sit and repeat until they're able to do the actions for each card. Then we introduce the run and the jump cards and vary the sequence. So stand, run, sit, stand, jump, sit, etc. And we gradually expand this to other action word cards until the children are able to perform the actions shown on the cards. And the key thing is here is you, the teacher, are communicating with the children without speaking. Your way of communication is through the use of the word card. And this is conveying to them that these little squiggles on a shiny card, they have a meaning. And as you change the word, you change the meaning. And it's showing them the concept of print and printed letters and the concept of words. We then look at the finish the sentences activity. When do we do this? Again, before starting book 1. And we do it whilst we're teaching the alphabet using the alphabet posters. What we're doing here is we're introducing the concept of words and sentences. Children are learning the alphabet and how words start with a letter. And children learn a basic ABC vocabulary before they go on to the books. And they learn to say English sentences and get the feel and the flow of them. Even if they can't fully understand it, they're getting a sense of the flow and the cadence of the language. So, to do this activity, we gather 3 or more of the sentence cards and choose maybe 5 ABC posters on the wall. And then we stand in front of a group of children who are sitting down, right? And then we show a sentence card and say it out loud and explain that you want the children to say each sentence and poster word when you hold it up. And then you hold the sentence card up next to one of the ABC posters, and children should say the sentence, completing it with the poster word. So in this example here, we say, I can see a boy. And then you vary it by, I can see a cow. And then so on, I can see a dog, and so on and so forth. And then we can vary it by asking all the children to read it out in a group, read it out together in a group, or you can ask individual children to do the exercise, completing the sentence and the word. And then we introduce other sentences, so we can say, look at the cow, look at the boy, look at the dog. Vary, I can see a boy, I can see a dog, and vary it around. Right? We gradually expand this to use the other of the 7 sentence cards and ABC posters until the children are able to say the sentences with the words with confidence. Now we come on to activity C3, the new word bingo activity. This is extremely popular activity, and hopefully this is definitely one that we'll be enacting as part of this training session. When do we do this? We do it after a group completes each book, because this activity can be done for the words in each of the 9 books using the cards that have been provided. The objective is to build the automatic word recognition for all the new words in a book. Again, it's part of our new words stage 3 of each book. The children should know eventually what the word looks like, what it sounds like, what it means, and can say it for themselves. And it's making learning fun. This is, again, it's a great fun game to play. There are several variations of this. I'm going to talk you through a reasonably simple example, which hopefully we'll be able to enact in the training as well. But there are lots of variations of this, as will be explained in the activities guide. So for preparation for this, we gather the 20 new words flashcards for book 1, because we're doing this when our group of children has completed book 1, Betty Bear, and they're now ready to play the game. So we gather 20 new words flashcards for book 1. On the back of each card, you have a number that shows which book it belongs to or which book it's used in first. We then choose 2 team captains, and each captain chooses 4 team members who all come up to the front of the class. So there's 5 people in each team, 1 captain and 4 team members. And then we give out the cards one at a time to the children in the teams until the cards are finished. So it's in this case, if we have 8 children, each of them will have 2 or 3 cards. And then we open, and so we have all the cards collected here. And then we open book 1 to the new words page on page 26. Then the teacher, or could be the team captain, reads out 1 word from the new word list. As each word is read out, each child in the teams must look in their hand to see if they are holding that word card that they have heard being read out. If they are holding it, they must hold that card up, showing the class, and then they put the card down on the table face up and say the word out loud. And only then can the team captain or teacher read out the next word. And when a team puts down their last card, they shout out, bingo, and hold up their empty hands in the air to show they've got no more word cards left. And basically, the first team to shout out bingo whilst putting down their last card wins the game. And what this game does is it teaches children to hear, read, and say the words, and is an excellent way for children to learn these vitally important words. And we can repeat this game over and over and over, changing teams, changing books, changing cards, until the children become so familiar with the words they just know them automatically, which helps then in their recognition of the words when they come to read them. Another word game that we do after a book is completed each book is called Crossing the River. And again, this is another fun action-based activity, which again helps children to learn by action. And the objectives again are to recognize the words, to work in teams, and to make learning fun. So in order to set this up, in preparation, we mark out an imaginary river on the ground. We're marking out 2 lines roughly 2 meters apart. And this is the river. And we suggest using a local name if possible. You could say it's the Shire River in the case of Liwonde, or choose any well-known river that's close by or nationally known. We can mark it out. It can be out in the open, mark a line in the dust on the ground area, or you can mark imaginary lines even on the floor of the classroom. I leave it to your imagination to work out how you can do it. We then gather, say, 10 new word flashcards for book 1, and we place them in lines of 5 words on the ground, face up, going across the river, as if the line is a bridge, or you could think of them as stepping stones. We then choose 2 teams of 4 to 6 children who line up on one side of each line of words on one side of the river. Okay? So that's showing there what one line might look like, and you might have 1, 2, 3, or even 4 separate lines of words, depending on how many words you've got and how many children you've got. So the activity here is the first child steps up to the first word in the river, says the word, and jumps over it. Right? If they are correct, they do the next word card. But if it's wrong, they go back to the back of the line, and the next child tries. Right? And you repeat this so on and so on and so on until the child reaches the end of the word. It reaches the other side of the river by crossing the river correctly. Now, what you as the teacher can do is you can swap the words around, you can move them positionally, you can move them between different lines so that they're not all learning exactly the same words. And you can get children involved in this activity. You can have them supervising. One of the variations, again, if a child gets a word wrong, you can say, well, they've been caught by the crocodiles, and then the children who are playing crocodiles grab the child and take them back to the back of the line. This is great fun and gets the kids laughing. And basically, the first team to all cross the river by saying and jumping over the words in their line wins the game. And what this game does is it teaches children to read and say the words, and again, it's an excellent and fun way to learn these important words. And just like the new word bingo game, this can be repeated over and over, changing the teams, the words, and the books. Okay, so that brings us to the end of part 2 of this session of teaching reading using Happy Readers. I suggest we take a break now, and hopefully we'll discuss any questions you want, and hopefully we'll enact at least 1 or 2 of those activities.